We've got our girl, and now we need to make a base. And to do that, I'm just going to take some scraps, this and that. So I just dipped my stick into my tight bond. Just plain old ordinary tight bond, nothing fancy. Get out my handy dandy clamps. All right, that's going to work. In my scrap bin, I found what I think will be the perfect piece of foam. This is just a sculptor's foam, very soft, and it's really super easy to work with. Because the first thing we want to do is to trim it. So I'm just going to take an X-Acto blade. I mean, it literally cuts that easily. And we're going to butt it up against this. Let us turn it over. And we can just sort of mark it out. Just that simple. Now I'm just going to glue that piece of foam onto that wooden backer. The goal here is to get a piece where the exposed pieces are wood. And we're going to sculpt this base a little, and we're going to cover it with Magic Sculpt. Let's break out the 5-minute epoxy. And let's lay down a pretty good amount of one side, and then a pretty good amount of the other side. Try to get them about the same. That looks about the same. Normally, I wouldn't mix my epoxy on the thing that I'm gluing together. It's probably not best practice, but I also think we're going to get away with it here. This epoxy bond is going to be way stronger than the thing I'm sticking it to. That is for sure. There's not a lot of strength in this sculptor's foam, but it's good to sculpt with, hence the name. Okay, I cut the base down to size, and so there's only a thin amount of sculpting foam on there, just enough for me to sculpt. I want her sitting like that on that base. All right, something like that. Something that looks kind of like that. A little. I just free-handed that. Don't want it to be even or parallel. Yeah, like that. That should do. That's beautiful. Okay, so now she has a base that she's going to sit on. It's going to be a little like water base. I'm just going to begin to lay out our... You can see, you can sculpt this foam with damn near anything. Your fingers. I'm using the back of a pen. If it breaks out like that, don't worry about it because it's going to get Magic Sculpted. So what I'm doing here is giving this water a little bit of body, a little bit of wave action. You can see where I'm going with all this, I think. We'll sand down some of the wood, and we're going to have a nice little bit of water for her to live in. I found a piece of scrap plywood, and I cut it roughly to fit. Found it on the old scrap bin, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to trace out, stick the pencil down in there. I don't know if you can really see what I'm doing, but anyway, I'm just tracing out the contours of the opening in the back. That's looks like I got it. Let's see if I got it. Oh yeah, nice. Okay, so now I'm going to cut this on the jigsaw, and we're going to have a cap for the back. All right, let's see how we did here. Got the hairs off it. Looks pretty good, pretty good. All right. Let's see how we did. See if this thing will fit. Yeah. Nice. Hair tight, but nice. Not bad. Okay, yeah. There's some gappage and this and that, but that'll fill right out. Nice and smooth. Good. This is going to be the mounting plate for the stuff that's going to be inside of this head to hang off of. And also, it'll finish the back. Time to lay on some Magic Sculpt. Mix it up in the usual way and make it into some worms, because I'm going to start by putting a bead of Magic Sculpt around the figure, and that's going to make the edge of the water, which is going to work out great. I'm putting the bead on first because it's going to kind of hold her in there. Now, this Magic Sculpt doesn't like to stick to the foam very well. Sometimes you're going to have to work it in. It's just that the foam is kind of soft and the clay kind of doesn't want to go on there. You have to work it a little to get it to stick to the foam, but ultimately you get there. I just put it on in small patches and work with each one, and it works out fine. Just build it up and smooth it out. Not having to work with a lot of clay at one time makes it really easy. I like the patchwork method. As always, with Magic Sculpt, I use water to smooth it out. It's really the secret to the stuff. Put it on dry, and then use water to smooth it out. Then you just use whatever tool you have handy to work it, anything that seems to make the forms you want to make. In this case, I'm going to cut some waves into the surface, just cut them in, and then smooth them out with my finger. Pretty simple. One aspect of working with Magic Sculpt is that it works different depending on how much it is cured. It's soft and sticky when you first mix it, but it gets firmer and loses the sticky surface quite rapidly. At the firm stage, you can shape it more easily into forms, and when it's leather hard, it's easy to cut and carve. When it's rock hard, you can machine it, drill it, use router bits, milling cutters, that sort of thing. So you become sensitive to how it works and use the changes to your advantage. But here I'm just using a simple stick tool and shaping it out, then smoothing it with water and my fingers. All right, base is looking pretty good. I'll come back later and sand it, smooth it, and rework areas if I feel like it needs it. Now let's get on to giving this girl some hair and teeth. I waited for the clay to get firm and lose its stickiness before I rolled these teeth out. It's a good example of what I was talking about, using the changes in the clay to your advantage. I want her to have thin, straggly hair. To make the hair, I wrap the clay around preformed wires. The wire will give the hair strands a lot more strength and make it much less likely that they'll break off over time. I want them to look really hideous and straggly, so I'm going to keep them pretty rough and uneven. Here, I'm just using the wire of texture and add detail to the hair. I think one of my favorite things about Magic Sculpt is that you can work it with such a variety of tools. I mean, you can pretty much use anything you've got laying around. Now I've got the hair stuck to the top of her head, and I just need to sculpt out where the hair connects to the head. A really great thing about Magic Sculpt is that it bonds to itself well, so you can build it up in as many layers as you want. There's never an adhesion issue or anything like that. You just build it up and sculpt it on. I put a thin layer of clay onto the teeth so I could sculpt them. I smoothed it out and let it set up for a while before moving on to the next step, which was scoring the teeth into the clay. By letting it set up a little, the clay wasn't as sticky as it would have been, and it made it easier to score the teeth in. The fangs I installed one at a time, simply gluing them in place with super glue or cyanoacrylate. The hardest part was to balance them in the mouth so that I could apply the glue. The last tooth was the most difficult one. Like all the others, I cut it to length, but then I had to figure out how to hold it in place while I applied the glue. With the other teeth, I did it with my fingers, but on this one, I wound up holding it by putting a tiny blob of sticky wax onto a tool. I applied the glue and then dipped another tool into the kicker. Totally missed the shot there, but whew, that kicker is magic. As you can see, I put a nice big bead of super glue around that tooth, and there should be enough kicker to set it off, but I can always kick some more, huh? Where's my kicker stick at? Oh, here it is. Okay. Dip it in, drop it in place. Okay, I did it. Nice. That's how I set the teeth, one at a time, with super glue and kicker. Beautiful. Let's see if I can back up a little bit here so we can see better. Yep, there you go. Done. The point to adding the teeth and hair after the sculpture was cast is that it would have been pretty much impossible to have molded it all in a single mold. If this were an addition sculpture, I would have to mold and cast the teeth and hair strands in separate molds and attach them just as I have done here. Well, that's about it for this week. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.